4 o'clock, we'll start our meeting, and everyone is present. Thank you for being here, guys. And thank you to Marty. Again, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome again, everyone. That brings us to item 3.1, public comment. Members of the public have the opportunity to directly address the board on any item of interest to the public that is within the jurisdiction of this board, whether or not it is an item noticed on this agenda. A member of the public may also speak before or during the board's consideration of any item listed on this agenda. We do have a 20-minute limit when the items are in the same theme or so. All of these seem to be in the same theme, may or may not. However, at the discretion of the board, we can take all of them. So this afternoon, we will take all of the public comment. You will have 5 minutes to address the board. At 2 minutes, I will give you a 2-minute warning, and at 30 seconds, I'll give you a 30-second warning, just so that you know. And we have our first speaker, and that would be Cornelia.
Thank you so much. Honorable members of the Board of Trustees, Dr. Beebe. I'm here today to thank Trustee Marty Bloom for her 8 years of service to our students and our college community. We had very turbulent times back then when Marty first ran for the board. Those of you who have been around long enough, you will surely remember. Well, people say going through difficult times together is relationship building. And in fact, the Faculty Association and Marty truly have had a trusted relationship over all these years. Believe me, before 2010, surely no trustees would ever share their cell phone number with the union president. But I do have Marty's. Anyway, I'm sure at the reception that I almost missed, a lot of people shared a lot of things about Marty. One fact you might not have heard is that Marty and her husband are our 2018 Mesa Holiday couple. So, Mrs. Mesa Holiday, I have a little present for you, and I now don't know how does that work with the Brown Act. I give
No, you can. Thank you.
So, you probably have heard that during the holiday season, special people get from me some German Christmas treats. So this is what's in the bag, and I just finished the card, so it's in there too. And I'm just here to say thank you so much, Marty, for everything you did for the college, and for sure for the city of Santa Barbara before that, from the Faculty Association and from me. Thank you.
Thank you, Cornelia. Thanks.
Thank you, Cornelia Alzheimer. Sorry I didn't say your last name, because you're Cornelia, part of the family, and here you are. Okay, our next speaker is Celeste Barber. Celeste.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I would like to speak to the November 14th incident and its aftermath. I'll be reading from an email letter that I sent to Dr. Beebe 1 week ago, and the only change I'll be making is I will not be referring to the college vice president by name, simply out of compassion for her. I want to express my concerns regarding the November 14 incident. Since then, I've continued to follow your various emails campus-wide, as well as the channel's articles and the comments presented at the trustees' meeting shortly following the incident. My initial reaction remains the same. I was stunned that an employee would be treated in the way that this woman was, and that the folks doing so would believe themselves entitled to behave this way toward another person. I know that this has become acceptable behavior of late, but it's not acceptable by my standards. What this tells me is how fearful folks have become. fearful for their jobs, worse, fearful of losing their good name and reputation. Has no one considered what it must be like to be standing right now in her shoes? How must her family and close friends feel? What did she do that merited this most public shaming? There are two ways that hateful words are communicated. The first is a means through which to degrade and viciously attack another person's humanity. I don't know anyone who would condone such behavior. The second, when the slur is positioned between quotation marks. I can't imagine that anyone would believe that the college vice president committed the former. So how does the punishment fit the so-called crime? She is placed on unpaid leave just before the Thanksgiving holiday and as we enter the Christmas season. I know you won't, but her pay should be reinstated. Meanwhile, her name is smeared and demands are made. Those are the words, too. The demand, quote unquote, that she resign or be fired. For me, the last straw was contained in the second attachment you sent out today, that was last Thursday, where the letter writers as a group refused to accept her apology or anything from her, and everything is broadcast in the most public way possible. It's horrifying. Here they reveal their true intent, and that is to wield power over this campus through intimidation. I have to believe that I am not alone in my distress. For me, it's not just the one person, this woman, but it's what has happened to us as a country. We now live in an America where one group, the extreme left, can silence people, and I say this as a liberal, by the way, can shut down free speech, including the ability to engage in civil discussion among one another. She and what happened to her is a threat to everyone else. Say or do anything that the extremists in our country don't agree with and will ruin you.
2 minutes.
I have thought about what it must have been like to have been in that room on November 14. Imagined what it must have been like to be her. Within moments after saying the word, she realized what had happened and attempted to correct herself. And simultaneously, she was verbally assaulted, attacked as being a racist, which she is not. She was backed into a corner. I have not read anywhere that anyone at that table or in that room spoke up. No one said that, hey, we should calm down. No one defended her or protected her, not even when she burst into tears and left the room. Not a single person followed her out. Not a single person attempted to placate others in the room. And when she returned 45 minutes later, they ignored her and left her to stand against the wall. We do not, must never, treat our fellows in the manner to which this woman was subjected. For the record, I do not know her. Santa Barbara City College is not the racist cesspool that this campus is now described as being. It wasn't when I taught there. SBCC was, still is, a wonderful school. Ours was an open and inviting campus. Nothing has changed except the rhetoric. You must not allow those voices to state what is not true. That was the America of 200 years
30
ago.
seconds.
100 years ago, and 50 years ago. It's not our country now. To claim otherwise is to reveal an agenda without America's best interest. Thank you very much, and good luck, Marty. I wish you the best.
Thank you.
Thank you, Celeste Barber. Our next speaker is Ray Napoleon.
It is my contention that it is overwhelmingly obvious that proper leadership could have circumvented a lot of the anguish our campus is experiencing. For the most recent situation, if Dr. Beebe had immediately expressed real solidarity with and support for our Black colleagues and students, the call for Lindsay Mass's resignation might have instead been a call for dialogue and healing. Then again, if Dr. Beebe handled the last 8 to 9 months differently, perhaps Lindsay wouldn't have even been at a gender equity meeting at all. The racism and misogyny would still be here, but we'd be dealing with it in a constructive way rather than a deconstructive way. We now have 2 crises instead of 1. I have come before the Board of Trustees I don't even know how many times now. I'm contentious each and every time I'm here. I will keep coming before you and asking why you are also complicit in the current campus climate. I received your letter from your closed-door session a few weeks ago regarding the appeal of my Title IX and 3 others, and in that letter, you all claim that you are all, quote, committed to prohibiting invidious discrimination based upon gender in all its forms, but then couldn't even be bothered to reply to my email asking a yes or no question. I waited for over a week for an answer and then heard from Joel Scholder, the school's attorney, that you weren't going to address the issues highlighted in my appeal for sexual misconduct by a now retired professor. So much for being committed to gender equity, huh? I'm so bitter towards you all because so many have been needlessly hurt. Please keep in mind today that many of the problems the campus is trying to fix, and because we have an ineffective superintendent, an ineffective board of trustees, and other ineffective leadership. This campus is in turmoil because of superficial fixes for complex problems, but while complex, not unique to SBCC. You can't read a magazine or newspaper without reading headlines that echo the events that have happened on this campus in the last 8 to 9 months. Seems obvious to me that by watching how things are playing out for other universities, other colleges, other companies, other institutions, that the #1 community college in the nation could navigate these hard times. Instead, we have leadership that continuously wants to sweep things under the rug, blame the ones that are holding them accountable for their transgressions, and provide Hallmark card responses to people who have been repeatedly hurt. The local newspaper has published 3 separate articles just this semester with the headline that includes SBCC President Apologizes. Too bad SBCC continues to be reactive instead of transparent, authentic, and a leader of cultural shifts. Today you celebrated outgoing Board of Trustee member Marty Bloom. It's too bad community members didn't pay attention to her endorsement of Darcel Elliott and when she shared with Santa Barbara voters that trustee member Marcia Kroinger has a, quote, dismissive attitude that diminishes and demoralizes the very population that she should be supporting and encouraging. Today on your agenda, you supply the report from your Gender Ad Hoc Committee. In that, you have proposed a new BP 3905 that strips away not only free speech from
2
campus
minutes.
members, but also strips away academic freedom. You make it so that if any employee by this college have concerns, as I had when I spoke up about an alleged rapist being invited to campus, that we may only go through the president and campus security. In addition, your office hours that this committee held were problematic at best. When you were supposed to be listening and learning from students, faculty, and staff, you were telling female students that they shouldn't speak up to the boys, and that when boys are bothering them, that it means that they just like them. It's no surprise to me that people that are supposedly doing this committee work on behalf of the Board of Trustees thinks the solution to all of this is silencing faculty and staff from speaking up. There's an article today in the Chronicle of Higher Education titled, "Free Speech is a Core Tenet of the Academy." College trustees really ought to know that. Maybe each of you should read that article and think about your responses to the last 8 to 9 months.
Thank you, Ray Napoleon. Our next speaker is Lauren Mendel. Is it Mendel?
Yes, it is.
Okay, good. Sometimes the penmanship's not like.
Sure, thank you. Hello, President and Board. I'd like to start out with 2 quotes by Paulo Ferrari, whose book you, President Beebe, presented at the in-service this last time around. Washing one's hands of the conflict between the powerful and powerless means to side with the powerful, not to be neutral. And also, the educator has the duty of not being neutral. When you present fixes to problems like eliminating email lists or saying that problems with speakers all have to go through one source, you are attempting neutrality, but you will fail at doing so. You will play into the hands of the powerful. It's completely ridiculous to claim that since the past 50 years, we don't have a problem with racism in America. This just goes to show how backwards this campus really is. I'll go on to read this letter. Dear Superintendent, President Beebe, and Board of Trustees and Academic Senate, as members of the Santa Barbara City College community, we want to respond to the recent incident in which the Vice President of Business Services, Lindsay Moss, used the N-word during a gender equity work group meeting. Even though Ms. Moss claims no ill intent with its usage, the impact and harm such a word causes must not be ignored. Therefore, to foster a campus culture in opposition to racism in all its forms, regardless of intentionality, we stand in solidarity with the Black Faculty and Staff Association, Black Student Union, SBCC Coalition for Justice, and SBCC Student Coalition for Justice. We request that their demands for appropriate response to this incident be met. 1, immediate resignation of Vice President Lindsay Moss for her use of a racial slur that goes against the mission and vision of SBCC. 2, meaningful, ongoing, and in-person anti-racism training determined by the Equity Committee, Black Faculty and Staff Association, and the SBCC Coalition for Justice for all members of the SBCC Board of Trustees, presidents, cabinet, deans, managers, committee leaders, working group leaders, and all other full and part-time members of the SBCC faculty and staff. 3, the establishment of an independent council for which we will have the responsibility of reviewing harassment claims and determining the appropriate responses. I'm staff, by the way. I work here too. My name's on this list that I'm about to read to you. It's a long list of people who signed this petition. I hope you take it seriously. Marisol Cota, Catherine Magnani, Daniel Gonzalez, Liz Jungerman, Antonia Atiliano, Lydia Aguirre Fuentes, Eric Flores, Gabby Morales, Joanna Moreno, Rosie Vidal Ares, Sabrina Barajas, Sergio Perez, Maria Morales, Guerra Schuyer, Vanessa Olguin, Laura Gardinali, Tina Kistler, Robbie Fisher, Regina Reese, Christopher Ulivo, Robin Goodenow, Noel Gomez, Chelsea Lancaster, Mary Lou Huerta, Cynthia Munoz, Esmeralda Camarena, Paloma Arnold, Alejandra
2 minutes.
Martinez, Moises Cardenas, Ana Garcia, Dolores Howard, Martit Ter Mate Martinson, Arnie Cooper, Deborah Gordon, Francisco Rodriguez, Susan Kipp, Juan Casillas Nuenes, Justina Buehler, Chris Burnell, Norma Bahena, Shelby Arthur, Yachio Roberts, Diana Wahlberg, Ignacio Ponce, Jordan Maloina, Clara Oropeza, Jody Millward, David Starkey, Jennifer Baxton, Bonnie Bryan, Melissa Menendez, Chella Corrington, Sandra Starkey, Annette Cordero, Margaret Porthrero, Anita Cruz, Denise Bacchus, Eileen Vleck Shamahorn, Tara Carter, Carrie Hutchinson, Violet Castillas, Andrew Gill, Elvira Monica Lakowski Cachol, Thomas Carrasco, Craig Cook, Ruth Morales, Bronwyn Moore, Peter Rojas, Allison Chapin, Kayla No, Pam Gunther, Osiris Castaneda, Ellen Carey, Elizabeth Einhoff, Daniel Swintek, Kip Everett Burks, Cameron Paulson, Michelle Bone, Elizabeth Bowman, Sarah Kamali, Lauren Mindell, Yvonne Ornelius Limon, Joan Graham, Natalie Demjanovich Napoleon. That's the list. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura Mendel. Our next speaker is Ellen Carey. Is Ellen Carey present?
I just have notes, not a prepared statement, so I apologize if it's a little rough. But I wanted to speak to what happened at the gender equity meeting because I've heard a lot of people speaking about what happened who were not there, and I was there. There are a few other people in this room who were there, but most of the people in this room and many of the people who have been talking about the context in which Vice President Lindsay Moss used the N-word did not actually witness it. So I wanted to provide a little bit more context, and I've also, some of you may have seen this, I've sent it to faculty, I've talked at the Senate, but the context was 15 minutes or so of discussion about a survey of students to assess student safety, students' feelings of safety, during which many people in the room spoke to the importance of having demographic information, and Lindsay Moss argued against getting that information, argued against getting information about the race or the gender of the students who may feel unsafe, making that the results of such a survey virtually useless. And in many ways, many people in the room tried to educate her about the importance of gathering that information with her resistance. The incident in the library in which some students were called the N-word was brought up twice before she used the full word. And when she used it, she was expressing incredulity that that happens on this campus. So that is the context. Not, oh, she didn't call someone that word, so therefore the context wasn't bad, she was relaying something that happened. That is technically true, but the spirit of the context is that she was for many minutes arguing against many people in the room, including many people of color, who were talking about the importance of understanding the experiences of our students on this campus, including the demographic information necessary to fully understand that experience in context. And she was arguing against it and expressing disbelief that this happens to our students on campus. And I also want to say that this, though you know from, I was here last time, I support the demands of the Black Faculty and Staff Association and the other coalition groups. But I also want to say that I know this problem goes beyond Vice President Lindsey Moss. This is a problem with all of us who are white. And I will say that all of us who are white are racist. And by that, I mean that we benefit from a system of oppression in which we are privileged and people of color are marginalized. And the idea, I think this is part of the problem, the idea that racism is a personal prejudice, as long as we hold that conviction that that's what racism is, we can say, oh, I'm not racist, and I don't know anyone who's racist on this campus, so therefore it does not exist. And that is a false way to understand racism. That's not how it works. Racism is a system of oppression that is woven into every fiber of every institution in this country. And until we as white people take responsibility for acknowledging that and looking at how we're complicit in it, it will never change. And so I have a book I want to leave with you all, White Fragility. And I want to say something about this book too. This is by Robin DiAngelo. There's also a shorter article if you want to read that first. And I want to say though that there is a difference between being silenced and being disagreed with. And a lot of what this book is about is how white people react when they are disagreed with around things like the existence of racism. When someone disagrees with you, you are not being marginalized. It is not reverse racism. It is your white fragility that makes you have that reaction.
30 seconds.
And we should all, white people in the room, read this book. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen Carey. Our next speaker is Akil Hill.
Hello, greetings to the board, President Beebe. So here we are. A lot of things have transpired. I think it's, before I get into it, I think it's important for you guys to understand the narrative of Black faculty and staff and how we arrived at our decision. There's a lot of talk about how could they call for her resignation? There's a narrative out there that we just a whole bunch of Black people got in a room and we're some like angry mob with like tiki torches, these kinds of random stuff. So I'm gonna let you guys in a little bit on what transpired when we met. And we clearly understood that whatever we voted on, despite everyone's personal opinions, we would actually that would be the final outcome. There was one question posed that that kind of loomed over everyone's head. And that question was, if you were in that position, what would you think that would have been the outcome from you? The majority of the people in the room said that they would believe that they would be terminated. So it's important that you guys understand that the majority of the black faculty and staff in that room believe that they would be terminated if they said something sexist, something anti-Semitic, homophobic. So that was the lens that we looked at it. We believe that the majority of the people in the room believe that they would be terminated. So people ask about grace. So we arrived at the conclusion of, you know what, let's not ask the college to terminate her because we believe in grace. So rightfully so, we arrived at asking for her to resign. So again, the narrative that let's revert back to America 50 years ago or 100 years ago where people of color couldn't even vote is somewhat, it's just ridiculous to sit and listen to that. But that was how we arrived where we're at, right? So that was why black faculty and staff said, listen, we will call for her resignation. The grace is in that. So that needed to be said. We as black faculty staff would like to say, we see Dr. Beebe and the moves that he's been making and the effort he's been putting in. I know I was pretty harsh up here last time, but it's important that we do things justly. And when we see something good that's being done, we have to recognize that. So we want to say, we see you with the letter, we recognize you with the letter, and hopefully we can continue to proceed on. But make no mistake about it, our demands are as such, and that hasn't moved. The needle hasn't moved on that. There has been some talks and some grumblings about Lindsay Mass meeting with ASG. I want to put that out there that's extremely disrespectful. There's been talks that the ASG wants to meet
2
with her.
minutes.
ASG wants to meet with her, and as black faculty and staff, we want to know that, hey, listen, we're hearing and we're seeing what's going on. So I don't know what's going on behind the scenes. We're still, as black faculty and staff, we're left out in the dark a little bit. So we hope that we can have some resolution soon in regards to this matter, because we've been patient. We've been patient, and so we're going to continue to be patient, but we hope that the institution gets it right. Thank you.
Thank you, Akil Hill. Our next speaker is Dean Evans.
Now I have to adjust this because Akil is so tall. There is clearly a lot of work that needs to be done by the college and is being done by the college, and I'd like to acknowledge everyone who's trying to get that work done. I think that's really great. I'm here to talk about something a little bit different. I think we should also acknowledge things that the college is doing and has been done, especially for our students. And here's a picture of our competitive programming team. This is the team that competed against other institutions in Southern California, against four-year institutions like Caltech or UCLA, UCSB, and other institutions, as well as other community colleges. We sent the largest team of all the schools. We sent 7 teams of 3. There's 7 groups of 3 persons each. And our team was by far the most diverse and had the most women participating. So I was very happy with that. The department's working very hard to increase representation from everybody. And there's also prominently above there is our very own student trustee joined us on that competitive venture. So it was a really good thing. I also would like to acknowledge Dr. Beebe and also Jeff, if you guys wouldn't mind coming down here. We have a couple of T-shirts for you guys from the event. I'm modeling the T-shirt right now. And so this is an acknowledgement of creating an environment that is supportive of students. This is a co-curricular activity which allows our students to excel as computer scientists and is very important to our department. And we really appreciate the support from both Dr. Beebe and also the deans and everybody else, as well as Jeff and the foundation. So thank you guys very, very much. So. The best part, this is one of our students. This is Juan Estrada, who is one of our superstars in the department, and he's just such a great guy. I dragged him along with me to take us how it was.
All right, he said, my name is Juan Estrada, and I'll tell you a little bit about the event. There were 7 of us, and I think there was about over 90 teams, and so 3 teams, 270, whatever students. But it's really fun. So you have 5 hours to solve all these 10 problems with code. And I mean, that's fun, but the big part of it is you get to meet so many students. This is everybody from Southern California, so universities and community colleges. You get to talk with the students, find out what their community's like for computer science. And yeah, that's the big thing. You also get to meet professors and coaches from all different academies. I met one guy from USC who really was passionate about getting community college students to go to that school. And but yeah, that's all I have. It was a great experience. Thank you so much for letting us have that.
Thank you, Dean Evans, and to our student, Juan Estrada. And our next speaker is Patricia Stark, but we're going to wait to take that at 5.1. Okay, so that brings us to item 4.1. This is minutes of the regular meeting of October 25th, 2018, and November 8th, 2018, and the minutes of the special meeting on November 9th, 2018. Is there a motion to approve? A second?
Second.
Is there any discussion? Okay, it's been moved by Trustee Nielsen, seconded by Trustee Croninger to approve the regular minutes of October 25th, 2018, and November 8th, 2018, and the minutes of the special meeting of November 19th, 2018. All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Okay, motion carries. That brings us to item 5.1, and this is a discussion report, a report of Ad Hoc Committee on Gender Equity, Sexual Harassment, and Respectful Conversations on Difficult Subjects. Who would like to, of the three? Who would like to open us up? Would you like to, Trustee Croninger?
Okay, I will start for a moment. The
Hold on, give me 1 minute. Patricia, did you want the comment before the discussion, or, okay. Because you can always come back in and chime in.
Good evening. I'm here today representing the Academic Senate, although the Senate has not met since the recommendations were published earlier this week. The Senate hasn't had a chance to address them as a group. I do want to thank you for your efforts to respond. I'm reading today. It's been a day. I wanted to thank you for your efforts to respond to our needs during these incredibly challenging times. If you remember, I actually did not support this ad hoc committee, but now that the work is done, I do recognize that these recommendations are sincere and a good faith effort on your part to address many of these concerns. You've heard many impassioned and deeply hurt faculty and staff speak to you on these issues. So thank you for your work on that. But having said that, there is a lot of new information and directions addressed in these recommendations, and many of them touch faculty in deeply impactful ways. In fact, I'm already fielding concerns from some faculty members about specifics. My colleague, Rayanne Napoleon, spoke about one today a little earlier in the meeting. I've also spoken to Cornelia from the FA, and her initial response is that some parts of these proposals will likely be need to be negotiated. So our typical process for these recommendations is that they are carefully reviewed first by the BPAP committee, the Board Policies Administrative Procedure Committee, the Academic Senate, and the Faculty Association. And the timeline for this review, which we approved last year, calls for 60 days for that internal vetting to be completed after the policies are sent out to BPAP. And fully recognizing that you have primacy over your own policies, we have a winter break starting in 10 days. The Senate is in recess until January 23rd, so I am asking now for flexibility with that timeline. And after your discussion, and I know the determination of what you're going to do today, I'll be in a better position to request a specific extended timeline for the spring. Thank you.
Thank you, Patricia Stark.
I just wanted to comment, you'll recall when we put some of that structure in place that we were up against the time frame, and we asked for flexibility in being able to deal with the summer particularly. So I'm in support of Patricia
Mm-hmm.
recommendation to give some flexibility and additional time for some of this.
Thank you, Dr. Beebe.
Okay. I appreciate that, and thank you for your comments, Patricia. And you are correctly describing our process. We're at the very start of thinking about these policies, and we recognize that there's a lot here for people to digest and think about and talk about. So I favor flexibility. I would also point out that we added in a step in front of BPAP, which was we asked for legal review of what we have here so that we would not be having BPAP consider policies that our lawyers might say, well, we don't think we can do it quite that way. So that alone should allow perhaps occur some of the time anyway over the holidays, and so I wouldn't think we were even picking up the question until we reconvene in January. So, and if more time is needed, I'm not objecting. Like I said, there's a lot here. So the committee met. We decided to have open office hours for specific times to encourage folks to come and talk with us about the concerns that they had that fell under the topics that we were working on. And we also did some limited research on policies and procedures elsewhere to see what we might learn from other institutions. The result of this is summarized in the first 2 pages, where we're describing 5 elements of recommendations. And then we each took turns basically working on how to write up those elements. So we thought we would divide up the description among us according to what we took responsibility for in writing it up. We discussed all of them, but we divvied up the work. And Robert is our first person.
Okay, thank you, Marcia. I prepared several proposed amendments to three board policies and 1 new board policy, and all of these relate to employment matters, employment practices at SBCC. We learned in our open office hours from several people that there were concerns about whether everyone at the college was being covered by being covered by our policies with respect to equity. And more specifically, we hear concerns that the principles of equal opportunity, diversity, equity, non-discrimination, and equal pay for equal work were not always applied. And therefore, we looked at the board policies and discovered that not every category of a person hired at the college was covered. More specifically, we decided that it was necessary or would be a good idea to amend certain board policies so that they covered part-time staff, adjunct faculty, and student workers. And that resulted in a proposal of amendments to BP 3420, which is the Equal Opportunity Board Policy, and also Board Policy 7100, titled Diversity in Employment. Secondly, we discovered there was no board policy related to student workers, although there is an administrative policy related to student workers. So we thought there should be a corresponding board policy on student workers. And at the same time, we felt that in hiring students for part-time work at the college, that financial need should be considered. At the current time, there is no requirement that financial need be considered when evaluating qualified candidates for positions in part-time employment. That also led to us evaluating BP 5130, which is the board policy relating to financial need, and we merely added a provision in that board policy to amend it to state that part-time students, in hiring decisions related to part-time students, that demonstrated financial need would be considered. So I think that's a summary of what we are proposing with respect to hiring policies and equity.
Thank you, Trustee Coninger and Trustee Miller. So I take it Trustee Haslin's next.
Well, it might
Or
make
go
sense
back.
if people have questions on a particular topic to bring them up now. I don't know.
As you're going through each part?
Yeah,
Okay.
because there are differences in the different areas.
It's a lengthy one, yeah. I see Jonathan scrolling through, if you could touch it and highlight it.
For 3905, like, this is very concerning because I feel,
We're not there yet. We're talking about Robert's section.
oh, you okay, never mind. I thought we were taking all questions.
Mm-hmm.
No,
Anybody? Okay. One thing that occurred to me afterward, and I apologize because we were done, and that is, and I expect we will get comments back if folks think it's appropriate, but whether we should have listed hourly employees there separate from part-time. So something to keep in mind. Okay, speaker policy, item 2. I heard Ray's comments. You are interpreting this in a way that is not what we have in mind, and if that's what it says, then that's not what we mean to say, to suggest that it impinges on, in any way, on freedom of speech or academic prerogatives. So I'm not quite sure what part of the language is of concern, but I think probably the best way to deal with that is when Academic Senate and BPAP address it. And so the one thought I would have there is that what will be very helpful in all of these cases is for us to get feedback that explains when you think something should be changed, so we understand what the issue is and what we're discussing, rather than just getting a red line of changes, so we can understand what is being conveyed. The thought here is to add in a clear process for people, because this seems to have been absent in board policy and in AP. And the way we normally do this is board policy is broad, APs work out the details, and the college faculty, staff, students, et cetera, are the ones, and administration, that work out those details. We, the board, are not that much involved. So this is the big picture item, and the big picture item is to convey a process. The process being, if someone is concerned about a potential basically a threat to the security of the college in terms of possible harm to students, to staff, to faculty, to employees, that everyone understands this is where we go first. Tell our security folks, tell our president. Now, this could be a whole range of kinds of issues, anything from an individual concern to, a speaker where it is thought that this will be controversial, and so we need to plan ahead for that situation. In talking to Patricia Stark about how that might happen, and in looking at other colleges, one way that you can assist our administration in dealing with these issues is to create a committee who specializes in how to handle these things. And we have specifically called that out. We've also called out the question of legal advice as we go through a particular fact situation, so that we are respectful in our response to questions of freedom of speech and academic freedom and those issues. So the idea here is just to say, here's where you go if you have that kind of concern. It does not preclude you from having an opinion wherever you may rightfully express that opinion about an idea, a content, a speaker, whatever that is that you want to express your opinion about. This doesn't say you can't do that, and it's not intended to say you can't do that. To give you an analogy, which is not directly to the speaker issue, but does speak to the way the process typically works, is when we had the Thomas fire, I think we all recognize that the decision whether to close the college during final exams was a very difficult decision, and Dr. Beebe had to make that call. And I think that he got input from folks who felt on either side of that question At the time, he heard from people who had opinions. I don't think anyone felt constrained in expressing those opinions. But he needed to make that call on what we needed to do, and he did that. So that is not like having a speaker come to campus, but it is a similar event in that you have to have that administrative structure that says, okay, we've heard what people have to say, and now we need to move forward with a decision on how to handle this. With that in mind, comments?
Yeah, so my concern my concern is, so is this supposed to say that the only thing you can do at first is to talk to the president about your concern? Or
No.
let's say I didn't want to do that and I just wanted to post on Facebook or send an email to colleagues, would then someone who did that be subject to any penalties for doing so?
Doesn't say that at all.
Okay, so it's more of trying to say this is an option, not a requirement.
Well, it's not so much, I mean, I'm not trying to make it a requirement. I don't think any of us are trying to make it a requirement. We're making it a process. So you say, I'm worried about this, what do I do? What you do is let these folks know. And central to the kind of worry we're talking about, frankly, is security and, you know, how that campus will handle events or controversial situation.
Okay, so then I think putting in language, it specifically then says, but if you wanted to not do this, you are within your right to do that, just to clarify for people who read this, because I read this and I also felt that this was saying you need to do this, and that doing anything otherwise is in violation. So maybe just saying something additionally that says, you know, but you're still within your right to post or make any statements you want, because you know, what if I didn't feel comfortable doing that? What if I didn't think that's the direction I wanted to go in? I mean, freedom of speech and expression are #1 amendment of the Constitution. We can't just tell people, you know, since you didn't follow the policy, now your concerns are invalid. As I don't want to get into like policies trying to restrict people's, you know, expression. So I think it's good to have a process, but I don't think we should restrict people to only use that process when they feel that they need to say something.
I don't think it says they're restricted to only using that process. I think it would be sad if someone feels there is a real potential harm and they didn't bring it to the attention of the college and the people who are in a good position to deal with it. That's a sad thing. So my hope would be that we all want to protect our students, protect our staff, protect each other, so that we have a safe place to be. So
I think one of the motivating factors for this recommendation was the absence of a process. That is, there was a vacuum, and what we were hoping to do is provide structure by way of a process that can be used. There's certainly no intention on my part to restrict freedom of speech. That is not on the table.
So yeah, that's what I was just saying. Adding in another paragraph that says this policy doesn't preclude you from X, Y, Z, then it would maybe assure some people that it's not the only way to do it. Does that make sense? Like, when you put something in writing like this, it could feel to people that this is what I have to do. But I think putting in language that says, granted, this policy doesn't preclude you from pursuing other means to express yourself if you felt someone was not a good speaker to come to campus.
yeah, I think we take that as a comment and forward that along with the rest of it to legal counsel and then to the BPAP, et cetera, process, assuming that folks even want to have a policy, and that's part of the discussion today, because the idea was we don't have anything, so let's help with that.
Any other comments? Trustee Nielsen?
Yeah, just a question here. It seems to me, and I appreciate what Jonathan brought up, but I kind of feel it's my questions kind of go another slightly different direction, and it's really nice to have these policies and stuff, but nowhere in here, Jonathan, did it say that, you know, you are required to make out this report if you're concerned about something. So I don't quite agree that it's necessary to put in verbiage to that effect, but I don't see any harm in it either. I'd like to see, maybe a statement in there about why the policy exists. If someone has something really important, they should speak up somewhere, some way, and this kind of thing provides a channel for that to occur in. What it doesn't do is make any promises or commitments that their information will be duly reviewed, in a timely way. I don't see that in here, and that bothers me a little bit. It's a lack of saying, if you fill this out, we will, more than one person will look at it and you will get a response. Because I think we need to demonstrate that we do read these things and that we do listen. And a lot of the rhetoric I've heard on other matters, probably over especially the last year, is that they're not getting the responses, at least not the responses they want to hear, or it's not coming in a timely way. And whether we're responding or not, what's not happening, in my opinion, and I could be wrong, but this is what I feel it could be based on what I hear and see, that somehow we're not getting the message across that we really did listen to you. And it's because I've heard just one too many voices out there, proved or not proved. I've heard the voices that say nobody listens. So I didn't see anything in here that said we will, or we are committed to, and if you don't get a response, please do this or anything else. I think that's for me, that's what's missing. And I think it's a much bigger issue than what Jonathan brought up about. His point is valid, but I think for me, this is the big issue. When you have policies and regulations or rules and there's no commitment or consequence to them, then they may as well, for practical intents and purposes, just sort of not exist. And we're just inviting chaos. That's my point. I'll be quiet for now.
I think you're talking about transparency as well as response
By all
time.
means, yeah.
And I would see that, I don't have a problem with including that as well in the kind of the package that gets reviewed. I think the AP will hit the details and work some of that out. So just to take another example, if a faculty member is concerned about a situation with another faculty member, I don't think you're going to want to raise that in a public forum. I think you are going to want to take that through a more confidential process. So we're looking for a situation where an AP can think through the different ways this could come up and how it should be handled when it comes up in different situations. And that's why a committee may be useful.
Any other thoughts, comments? Yeah, Trustee Miller.
I just want to add that comments from Jonathan and from Craig, I think should be well considered. I think they're making points we need to take into account. It certainly wasn't in our intention to have a strict requirement, but I think that just a couple points. One, that Trustee Haslund has already mentioned, we in no way intended to curb in any form free speech or academic freedom. And in fact, I think a guiding principle of our drafting of these proposed policies or amendments to policies is the concept of freedom of speech and academic freedom. And I'd also note that the intent of this policy, if you read it carefully, concerns a concern about, or a person's concern about unlawful acts, dangers to persons, substantial disruption. So under those circumstances, we're giving that person who has the concern a method or vehicle for expressing those concerns and attempting to do something about them. So I just wanted to make those comments.
Any additional comments? Okay, well, thank you guys for doing this, and I think it's good.
We have more.
Well, I know, but I'm just saying, I think it's good, and I think for us, this is the beginning. So we have wonderful structure by which this will all go through. So I just think for folks listening, this is also part of our process. So it's the beginning of our process. So thank you for listening to our discussion, because we can't talk to each other otherwise. Yes, Patricia, please.
I do want to specifically address that proposed BP. As my name was brought up as a potential consultant on this, I want to clarify that my conversation with the ad hoc committee was really limited to the idea of an engagement team. These teams have been created at the University of Michigan and UC Berkeley exclusively in preparation for off-campus provocateurs, people who come in with the idea of disrupting the campus community. These universities, because they've spent millions of taxpayer dollars trying to deal with the aftermath, they've now learned to try to deal with things ahead of time by pulling together either the student group or the faculty group that's supporting the speaker, the head of security, the head of the academic senate, really any group that could be involved in these activities. So my contribution to this conversation was solely about the creation of some type of engagement team to deal with outside provocateurs. Thank you.
And that I absolutely agree with that. Thanks for clarifying it.
Thank you, Patricia.
Okay, item 3. In our conversations in the office hours and input that we had in general, there was a fair amount of interest in highlighting the possibility of using a mediator in our harassment process. And when we looked closely at the existing AP, it already provides for the use of a mediator, but it is apparently not something that we have consistently invoked or even perhaps used at all, to my knowledge, yet. But the AP says we can do it, and we thought that it would be good to go back to the board policy, and this is number 3, and basically insert that. And we do not view mediation as always appropriate. There are certainly situations where it would not be appropriate, but we wanted to make it clear that that's an option where it might prove useful.
Any thoughts, comments, questions?
Okay.
Anyone else?
Anyone else? Why did we do it in this order? I seem to have the ones in the middle here anyway. Okay, the next one is BP 3050. And this is an area where we have had discussion before as a campus, and I think what we were interested in doing is putting out some ideas for additions to our Institutional Code of Professional Ethics, which is 3050. We are putting it out there for discussion among our consultation groups, as well as the same process that we're normally talking about. But I think this is one of our important policies, and I know the Academic Senate had some discussion some months ago about it, and really I think the whole concept of what we aspire to when we interact with each other and as we speak with each other, as we teach in the classrooms, as we talk to each other in all of the places that we meet up on this campus, it's just a really important thing to be thinking about. So we are presenting this as an idea for all of you to be thinking about, and you may have other ideas, but that's what it's here for.
Does anybody have any comments to item 4? Number 5. Well, you guys were just had a description of.
Number
And
5
when,
is mine.
there's a good pictorial. I mean, we could put it up. It's a.
We entitled the fifth one, Dispute Management Process. And here again, it seemed to us that what we were trying to do is fill a vacuum. We don't currently have a process by which, well, separate entities do. The Academic Senate has its own process for dealing with disputes between faculty, but we don't have anything for a campus-wide dispute. And it seemed to us that we should at least provide the superintendent president with a recommendation, recognizing that this is effectively operational as opposed to a specific policy that we're recommending. And therefore, we are quite nebulous in the kind of dispute resolution approach that he might take. But we did provide some examples that either on campus or on-campus mediators, as has already been suggested, or off-campus experts might be brought forward, or the development of an ombudsperson's office where individuals with a concern could go in absolute safety and confidentiality and talk about what is of concern to them. I think our effort was to establish a reliable, neutral, predictable, and timely process by which concerns can be expressed and hopefully resolved. That's the goal. How this thing comes together is, and I believe should be, the purview of the superintendent president.
Veronica.
Dr. Beebe.
Consistent with the Black Faculty and Staff Associations, one of their items relates to this specifically, and they brought up an example of something that UCSB uses, which is a judicial affairs unit, which is really independent of the administration and provides that distance so that people would feel like they could report without having any fear or worry about retaliation or anything to do with the administration. Those are things that we are looking into, we're exploring, and I think it would be very helpful for us to be able to have that kind of a process. And I know that we're committed to it. We've talked about that, Dr. Haslam and I, and we want to explore how that might happen and be able to make a recommendation.
Any questions or concerns?
No? Okay. Thank you, Dr. Beebe. Thank you, Trustee Haslam, and Trustee Miller and Trustee Coninger. This was a lot of work. Thank you. Item 5.2, this
Yes,
is...
it was. just for the hell of it.
No, I know, because we kept, moving things around, and it was a lot. Item 5.2, report of the Ad Hoc Mitigation Committee. Who wants to open us up with this? Trustee Coninger?
Okay, the Ad Hoc Mitigation Committee was formed back in September of 2016, and Peter, Jonathan, and I were members of that committee. We also invited consultants to the committee, which included Dr. Beebe, Jeff Green, Luz Reyes-Martin, and they were often involved in our meetings. Committee was formed basically to discuss potential mitigation measures vis-a-vis the community with regard to the impacts that the community perceives the college has on it. And the impacts we were looking at in particular arose out of the survey that Dr. Beebe had done when he first joined as our superintendent president, asking a number of questions. The one we focused on was, what are the weaknesses of Santa Barbara City College? And there were 675 total respondents to the survey, and I didn't bring the breakdown, but that included faculty, staff, students, and community. The largest number was from the community. And so the areas that we decided to respond too, were informed by the fact that a number of the issues raised in the survey were being dealt with in other ways in other areas. So, for example, the issue of not having state-funded adult education, which was a very high number 2 on the list for folks, that was already being dealt with in a different venue. We didn't feel we needed to address it. So what we did was we organized, defined the subjects we did think we should address, and then decided to meet with a number of our local political leaders to talk with them and get more input from them about issues that they perceived that we might want to talk about here. So that took quite a while, actually, because it's not easy to get that particular group of busy people together, and then on top of that, try to find a time when we can meet with our also busy local elected representatives. So that took between September 20th of 16 and May of 17. And we met with then Mayor Helene Schneider, County Supervisor Joan Hartman, County Supervisor Janet Wolf, and we also met with the leadership of the Housing Authority of Santa Barbara. Then in the end of August, we heard from Jennifer McGovern of the Santa Barbara County Housing Trust, which has a program for assisting first-time buyers of homes, home buyers. And so we heard from her about that program. We held 2 more discussions. We looked at some research, with 2 more discussions just as a committee, looked at some research on housing by UCSB, and tried to get a study on housing by the LA Community College. That study we finally got in March of 2018, and we had our last meeting right then for a total of, I think it was 9 meetings in all to discuss those recommendations and our list of recommendations. So last July, I ran through that list, and what you are looking at in this report is basically the same list that I ran through in July. So the thought was, in terms of these recommendations, that some of them are more of a decision. So, for example, if we want our president to do something, then the board would decide we wanted to do that. Others were more of a discussion or consensus type issue. So we identified a couple of things where we might work with the city, and I think some ideas have come up since then, which Dr. Beebe may want to comment on. But our suggestion, based on our discussions at the time, were issues of easing traffic and increasing safety on Cliff Drive, and I think we're all very concerned about that. We recommended that Dr. Beebe write to the City of Santa Barbara. It doesn't have to actually be a letter, but the question is to get together here and talk about these issues. And the issues we had suggested was exploring whether a bike lane could be added to Cliff Drive. We're encouraging our students to ride bikes to the campus, and I and others have seen some fairly dangerous situations occur when students are trying to drive up the hill to the entry or down the hill on a bike. I mean, they're either on the sidewalk, and that's a problem, or they're in the traffic, and that is also a problem. So we're asking whether a bike lane could be added to Cliff Drive, and consider also in the traffic category whether a left turn pocket might be added for turning onto Rancheria, where the traffic tends to get backed up when everybody's leaving at about the same time. So that is something that we were suggesting would be a decision. So I'd pause here and see what people think of it. Jonathan?
Yeah, we're still just on number 1, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, so with this one, I really think the overlay recommendation, is honestly ridiculous. I think it's naive to think it's going to help. I think it's going to hurt a lot more people than it's ever going to theoretically help. It's going to put students on the street by getting rid of potential housing. It's going to...
Wait a minute, I'm not at housing yet.
I'm at the overlay.
I was stopping at traffic and safety.
Okay. Continue, and then I'll mention the overlay.
Yeah, I know, but I was pausing at traffic and safety, so if we could just see whether people have an opinion about that or not.
Do you have thoughts on traffic and safety on number 1? Not that one? No. Oh, okay.
I wanted to add some things to this. First of all, I want to make sure that we're clear that the survey that I did with the community when I first arrived is nowhere near, and I didn't claim it to be any scientific survey. It's not scientific at all. The N is obviously very tiny, very small. It's but it gave us some information. Second of all, it was really great to be able to have Mayor Kathy Murillo here, and we've had a chance to chat about some things related to the entrance, and we're going to be meeting with Paul Casey and the traffic engineer about the entrance to the college here in the main campus, and explore some options on how we might be able to improve that and make it a lot safer. It's dangerous going left or right, frankly, and we know that. We've had several incidents over the years there, and most recently a horrible fatality. So these are critical things that Luz Reyes Martin and I have been working on to try to set up some conversations about how we can address that. And I think it needs to be one of the top areas for us to move forward with.
Thank you, Dr. Beebe, and thank you, Mayor Murillo, for being here. Any other thoughts? Okay, you want to go on to entertain?
Well, we can do that. I was hoping that we would kind of say yes or no on the idea of go work with the city on these traffic safety issues. I mean, I would, as a decision, that we are asking Dr. Beebe to do that.
I think you've started.
Yeah, we're moving forward on that. Yeah, we're going
Okay.
forward on that.
Yeah.
So everyone's happy with that?
Absolutely.
Okay, that'll do it. Okay, number 2 was communications. And the idea here was really more of a kind of an ongoing comment. In meeting with some of our local electeds, we found that they may have felt a bit out of the loop in the past. Janet Wolf in particular felt that she had been left out of the loop on our planning under Plump. And so we just reiterate the idea, and I believe we are doing it now, that we need to keep our local electeds in the loop when we are doing things in their areas, or even if we think that they may be impacted by what we are thinking and planning in their areas. So that's a comment sort of thing.
Did Trustees have any thoughts or comments on number 2, communications? Trustee Nielsen, this has been one that we've had many discussions about.
Yes.
Good.
We're making some progress.
Yes, we are.
Okay, one of the concerns expressed about the college was in the category of unbridled growth and the size of the college. We here at the college certainly know that our enrollment is not what it was in 9-10, that it has dropped significantly, and that causes a reduction, we hope, and it would appear, in the impact on the community when we are not quite as large as we were then. So we recommended the college have discussions as well with the community about the issue of optimum size. We are having those internal discussions, and we have had significant internal discussions about that. And we also recommended that the college continue to communicate to the community that our enrollment has dropped, because there are many people who are continue to be not aware of that situation. So we try to bring it up. That's, again, not intended as a decision item so much as discussion. Anybody?
Anybody have any thoughts?
I have a comment on that. Just yesterday, we made a presentation to the Rotary Club at the Santa Barbara Club, and this exact question came up, and they thought that our enrollments were busting at the seams. They didn't realize that, in fact, our enrollments have been dropping since 09-10, and so we actually made that very clear to them. So, you know, every opportunity we can take to make that clear, I think is important, which is to your point.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Trustee Nielsen, yeah.
Well, it kind of goes back to the last point about communications. You know, we're making strides and we're discussing it, but we haven't got there yet. Because when I go to see groups of people, there are always individuals that know, but the majority of them don't know. You know, they don't focus on it until they encounter a problem. And so we're getting better. And I know it's continually getting better. So I want to emphasize that part, but are we there yet? No, we're not. But we're trying. And the communications efforts keep slowly, but they keep evolving. And that's the important part, that we don't just stay with the status quo.
Trustee Abudu.
So I just want to say that I think having an optimal size is a good idea in theory for planning purposes and for managing our college. But one thing I've seen a lot in the news in the past couple of weeks is probably having a recession soon in the United States, and it's coming up. There's a lot of indicators that it's happening. One thing we know that happens when a recession hits is more people go back to college. So I don't want us having an optimal size, which doesn't exist in the law, preclude us from taking in people who need our help a year or two from now when they're out of a job and they need to get retraining to get to the workforce. So I know people might have had a problem when we expanded a bit when the 08 recession hit, but those people probably have a better life now because they came here during the recession. So I think having an optimal size is great for planning, but should never preclude us from, going past it because we're in a recession and more people want to come here. So yeah, that's what I'm going to say on that one.
I think we agree on that part. My takeaway in talking about this for the number of years that we have is basically how this works in tandem with facilities, with budgeting and things like that. And so it's just looking at what is this optimal size so that when we are looking at building or not building or replacing, deferred maintenance, it was really working in tandem with all those different pieces. I definitely know that for us, the information we've received, and certainly Dr. Jarrell started it now, Dr. Ralston, and this is a really complex one for us, and it is directly tied into funding, and now with the new funding formula, it's even more complicated because of the categoricals and things like that. So this one is definitely one that it's going to be something we're still going to continue to rely on Dr. Beebe because the expertise are in-house, and I mean, you guys have been trying to figure this out for a while, and it's difficult, but I think we all agree that our mission is here to serve the very populations of people needing workforce development or CTE, transfer, whatever it may be. So I don't think we're moving away from that, at least at this table. So I think we're good.
Yeah, I agree. And I agree with Jonathan that obviously if there was a need, we would respond to it. The value of an optimal size as a target is that it contracts with what used to be, which was we were chasing TLUs and FTES every year so that we would grow at a rate that was designed to increase revenues, but not necessarily at a rate designed to accomplish our mission. And I think that's what we've gotten to with this notion of an optimal size. It'll bounce up and bounce back down, but there's at least a target.
Yeah, Trustee Miller.
And I think also when you look at the new funding formula, we have to be sensitive to, as it gives more credit to student success and student access, we have to keep our eye on that. And to the extent we grow and the growth impacts our ability to accomplish student success, we have to keep our eye on that. So I agree that with Jonathan that most likely there's going to be pressure in the next couple of years. There's been, as you pointed out, lots of discussion about the recession that's coming, and we know what happens in recessions. I think you're absolutely right about that, Jonathan. This obviously is a complex matter that will require further discussion by all of us.
Yeah, I would agree. It's hugely complex. I mean, there are all kinds of difficulties that arose in the 9-10 timeframe. I certainly witnessed students jamming classrooms, jamming hallways, trying to get into classes they could not get into. I mean, there is a facility component. There is a limit to the number of qualified faculty that we can hire to teach them. As Robert just mentioned, the new funding formula with an emphasis also on our most disadvantaged students. So there's a lot of pieces to this puzzle, and we're certainly relying on Dr. Beebe to help us through that.
This is a very complex topic, and we've had whole retreats on just enrollment management and how that works and all the different components that are involved with that. But as a community college and a teaching institution, as opposed to a research institution, one of the big benefits of a community college is the smaller class size, and being able to have faculty, really get to know the students, engage with the students, be close to the students. We know that those elements help them be successful. And so one of the things when we come to this idea of expanding our enrollment is to make sure that we don't stretch the faculty so that they are dealing with class sizes that are unreasonable for them. And I think that we need to kind of protect the faculty in the class size related to that. I mean, if you're in writing classes, those have to be smaller, a lot of grading. It's not Scantrons anymore, some of these things. And all of those components, it's very complicated. But your point's well taken, Jonathan, and certainly we're here to serve all of those that need our services as best we can.
Thank you, Dr. Beebe. Yeah, Trustee Bloom.
It just seems to me, I agree with what's being said up here, but it seems to me that when we look at optimum population, sometimes it's reported to us in different ways. So we can't really do we can't, I figured this out after a couple of years. But, so you look at this one and you see FTES and then you see something else. And so you're not quite sure how that all relates. So I think it's important that the reporting is consistent and that each year the Board of Trustees should look at that and see how many people are really here and all that sort of thing. It's so that we're really aware of it. It would be good to have it in the paper too, if we could do that, somehow, just so people know. Because I agree with what Marcia was saying, that, people, or I think you just said that people didn't know that our enrollment was going down. So we need to keep that awareness up there. So maybe an annual review of it and making sure that it's in the same kind of thing that we can compare last year's numbers to and so on.
Mm-hmm. Maybe when we do,
Luce is shaking her head, yes, so that's good.
Luce is good.
I was thinking, with the report, maybe, and Lindsay and the team do such a good job explaining this, and it's because when it comes to budgeting, it's FTS. So if you're 6 units and I'm 6 units, we make 12, which is 1. But the Mesa sees 2 people at Lazy Acres shopping, and 2 is not 1. So maybe, so I think when we attach the numbers, then that's the FTS, but then when it's just head count, then we know how many bodies. And you guys, I feel like the college has done a really good job in the last years, like really, especially during the presentations with facilities and the community, really highlighting how many bodies and all of that, but it's complicated.
And enrollment management, enrollment itself is a moving target, and so you have to take the sample at the same time each year, or you're comparing apples and oranges. And that's been something that we haven't done well in the past. We've reported at different times during the year what our enrollment is rather than the same time. And so we've gotten on a path now the last couple of years where we release official enrollment numbers based on a specific time and date. So that's been helpful in consistency.
Well, you let us know, Marty, when you're out in the community, flipping to the papers. You just drop us a message. Number 4, housing.
Yeah, I would also add, just on the previous subject, we had, Dr. Beebe has put together a really helpful, that Fast Facts little page, which compares us to 2009-10, apples to apples, and I think that's something that we can use in talking to the community about some of this. Okay, number 4, housing. First item up there was that we recommend that the college continue to work cooperatively with local entities. We know that lack of affordable housing is an issue for the entire community, and I know from recent discussions in City Council that particularly the housing in the professional category, I believe, if I'm right, Dr. Or Kathy Murillo, our mayor, that is a big missing component that we had hoped to do better on. So anyway, there's different levels of housing depending on your income and so forth, and that one appears to be a real difficult spot, which is probably where our faculty fall. We also recommend that faculty and staff be periodically reminded or informed about the Santa Barbara County Housing Trust Fund and how to contact them in case that they are looking for a first-time home buyer situation. That fund will be limited. It's not like a lot of people will be able to get help, but they really had a very excellent program, and we'd like our faculty who might be, and staff who might be in that situation to know about it. We also recommended that the SBCC Promise students be surveyed regarding their housing needs. These are local students, and we are collecting, I know, a lot of data. The foundation is working on that to look at various parameters with our Promise program and see how it's doing and how it might be improved. So this was something we asked them to do as they're collecting data, and I think they were going to do it. So we'll see that when they're ready with telling us about their data. Okay, now we're getting to the one Jonathan was talking about earlier, which is writing to the city of Santa Barbara, asking about the city looking into the possibility of a zoning overlay in the Mesa neighborhood that would limit or disincentivize perhaps conversion of single-family homes in neighborhoods of single-family homes into student housing while you grandfather the status quo. This is an approach that has been successful in quite a number of places where there are significant educational institutions and students attending them who want housing, and it's intended to kind of balance those needs in the immediate neighborhood around the institution. Whether or not that's something that could be done in Santa Barbara, I have no idea, and that's frankly just the question. Is that even possible? So, Jonathan, you had some thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, what I want to say is not on the possibility. I don't know. I'm not a planning expert, but I think that, let's say it is implemented, I think it would have very negative consequences from, I mean, first of all, you set a precedent that we start saying this population of people shouldn't live in this area, because then what's next? Do we say they can't live in the east side? Do we then say, can they not live in the west side? Because, you know, we just don't want, where do we push the students? We can't just, it's like dust. You can't just move it under another rug just to get rid of it. They are people who are trying to go to school here and have housing. So I think doing this kind of thing is actually, I don't know, it's insulting to our students. And here's what it's going to do. First of all, it's going to make them unable to live in the Mesa area, because even if you grandfather in people who live there right now, next year they are going to move out, and then maybe regulations would get onto the landlord to not rent to students. That's one thing. Then another, if they start leaving this area and they still need to live somewhere in the city usually to be nearby, they're going to put market pressure on families, working families in the west side, which is the closest neighborhood besides here, to push those people out. And then we're going to have a situation where families are, and usually families of color who are working class, are going to move out of the city at a rate that faster than they already are, and then that's going to create more traffic. They're going to have to spend more money on transportation. So I think that harms another population of people we're supposed to be helping. Another thing is, you know, I don't think the city council is going to pass something like this. I can't speak for them, and I think it would be maybe embarrassing for us to even propose something like this to the city council. So I think, especially when we're saying, okay, students can't live in the neighborhoods of the Mesa, or we don't think they should live here, and we're not providing an alternative option for who knows how many people live in the Mesa who are students. And one thing that I always harped on in this committee is that we need to do a real study of our students to see where they live and what their challenges are in housing. And that kept getting shot down and turned into surveying the Promise students, which is still like 10% of our student body. So we should survey a wider diversity and swath of our students to get a clearer look of where they're at and what they need. So I think this one is reactive. I think it doesn't help anybody. It actually hurts a lot of people. And I think it would be embarrassing for this institution to even recommend.
Student trustee Inkpechi.
I agree to.
Your red knob, if it, or the.
Hello.
Yes.
Okay, cool. I agree totally with Jonathan because there's already a problem of student housing, and moving people out of the Mesa area, it's going to be terrible. I just want to ask, how do you see this helping the student housing problem right now?
Well, two things. One, I didn't see it as moving students out of the Mesa area so much as considering how you can both maintain the status quo for neighborhoods. This committee was looking to questions of the impacts of the college on neighborhoods, on the community. And so from the point of view of the community, there has been considerable concern that their neighborhoods get converted, and their single-family housing gets converted into student housing. And so the idea was more of a balance between the two so that you still have a cohesive neighborhood and you also have students there. So that's the thinking.
Trustee Nielsen?
Yeah, this topic has been going on for decades and decades in towns and cities all over the place in the United States and in other countries I'm aware of. People that finally get to the point where they buy a single-family home and it's their home, and they've been living in that way in a neighborhood. It's human nature. None of us, people don't like change. None of us really do. And then that's why cities have zones and counties. They zone property for certain uses, like this zone is for single-family dwelling, this is for like duplexes, this is for apartment multi-unit buildings. They zone that way. So basically when a developer goes into a neighborhood or somebody just takes a house and decides, well, I'm just going to make 3 apartments out of it, and then doesn't even get a permit and it doesn't get checked on for a while. Marty's probably very familiar with this issue and has seen it all the time come up. To me, the surveying the neighborhood, this kind of proposal in a neighborhood doesn't really make anybody move out or kick anybody out that's there. The proposal actually, when it's actually made, this is just a description, it grandfathers in what already exists, assuming the city can do that. So we're not saying, okay, you can't live here anymore. What they're saying is, we want to create a balance. Because when you have single-family homes and then you have multi-family or apartments like next to them or divided housing like that, any change like that is going to affect the value of the homeowner's property. It's going to have some effect. So what the cities try to do, and what our city will try to do, is to make as many people happy as they can and walk down that middle road. So this kind of approach happens, and it seems to be an approach that is doable. Is it the best approach? I don't know. Nobody's going to be 100% of the people aren't going to like it, but it keeps being employed because it seems to satisfy most of the people most of the time, and we don't always see any better alternatives. So if you get a better alternative, Jonathan, because your ideal is fantastic. I mean, it's the ideal, but how do we get there? And without hurting somebody else, how do we keep as many people as happy as we can? Because people that worked very hard and did get that house and own it, you know, it's not right to maybe restrict, but maybe it's not fair either to allow them to subdivide it and rent out a bunch of apartments in a neighborhood. Who's right, who's wrong, who gets hurt, who doesn't. So it's, anytime you help one specific group, you take away somewhere else. So if you could find a way to make both people happy, then it's win-win, and it'll go forward. And I don't know what the answer is.
And just to respond really quickly,
Sure.
is my next comment on the second part of the recommendations is an actual solution to, providing an actual solution. But, what I'm going to say is the people who bought a house on the Mesa knew that a college existed here before they bought their house. Like, when you're making the calculus of where you're going to live, living across the street from a community college, you're like, oh, maybe there might be students living nearby.
But you don't want to get in front of them and say that at a meeting.
I've said
in
that to
those
them
words.
before. We were at
They
a
don't like
city
it.
council board joint meeting. I said it to them because it's true. And we shouldn't also then restrict an individual's ability to succeed because of the year they were born. Housing was cheaper in 1970 than it is in 2018. And so why should someone suffer because they were born in a year where there's less availability of somewhere to live? So I think, us saying, oh, let's do an overlay that says don't rent out to students, I think is just without providing, other solutions that are more proactive. I think just for us looks like, oh, we're just trying to brush this issue aside.
Yes, Trustee Miller.
Interesting.
I share many of, not necessarily all, but many of Jonathan's concerns about this. But I would add this. I think we do have a lack of information, or I have a lack of information. I don't know what the zoning is in the surrounding neighborhoods, and I suspect there is a variety of zoning, depending on how far out you go from the college. So before we would ever propose something like this, I think we have to know more about the impact. And it may be there's no impact. It may be that the zoning right now would prohibit what this intends to do. But I think we have to know more before we make this step and recommend this particular proposal.
And that's why I was suggesting to our ad hoc committee that the right course of action is not to survey the promised students, but to survey all the students and our workforce as well to get a clear understanding of everyone affiliated with SBCC, what their housing needs are, what their housing struggles are, where they live, getting a picture. And we're literally flying blind. We're just talking about housing without any actual information about where people live and what they need.
I agree with that as well.
There was a point I recall from just a few years ago when we were asking for that very data, and we were given a reason at the time by the then president, before Dr. Beebe, why they couldn't collect that data, all of that data, to get exactly where the students live and then keep it. I don't remember the exact response.
I remember the reason.
But this is not the first time we talked about this.
Yeah.
The
Well,
reason,
Hold on, Trustee Abud.
I was just going to
Dr.
say,
Beebe.
one of the reasons, and I'm not sure what Dr. Gaskin may have said on this, but one of the reasons is that the student address at the time of application can change dramatically 2 or 3, 4, 5 times over a specific time frame, and so it's difficult to understand exactly where they are. I mean, that's one aspect to this whole thing that has been brought up in the past. Could we still do this and get an idea of where students are? Yes. So what Jonathan's suggesting isn't completely out of the realm. Obviously, we can get that information, and I believe that what you're saying in terms of the entire student body is going to be obviously much more reflective of what the information that we need, as opposed to just the promised students. I agree with you, Jonathan, on that.
Excellent.
and let me just follow up on that. UCSB does an annual survey on its transportation, which is not this, but they survey every single employee, faculty member, student at UCSB, asking them, where do you live? How do you get here? And that's for a transportation issue, but we can adapt something extremely similar to say, where do you live? Oh, in the city? Which neighborhood in the city? Oh, how do you get to campus? Then we can talk about transportation. We can ask, do you struggle to afford rent? Do you struggle to find permanent housing? But we need to ask everybody. We can't ask 1,000 or 1,500 people. And we also can't just ask the students because we have a large workforce who, I want to know, do they drive in from Ventura for the most part, or do they live in the city? I can get a feeling of that, but I can't. I want to look at a hard number and say 500 live in Ventura, 700 live in the city. Like, I don't know that information. I think it's irresponsible to make decisions without knowing that information.
I agree.
I would just suggest then that the issue that we convened the committee for was to examine the impacts on the community. And so to add to what you're suggesting about surveys is really also to add in our community. I mean, don't we need to ask our community their situation and what impacts they're experiencing and how they feel about these issues, in the same sense that you're talking about asking the students where they live. Because really we're looking at how can the college live comfortably in its community, with its community, and not have the kind of unfortunate feelings that the members of the community have had in the past about the college and about the number of students that they felt were unfairly impacting their lives. And so there's a big picture here where we're trying to, again, balance. We're trying to balance the needs of the institution, of our students, faculty, and staff. And I agree with you, there's the whole issue of workforce housing. But at the same time, we're trying to balance our presence in the community in a way that it works out as best as we possibly can for everyone.
I just want to put one final note, is that I get the community concern, but we've always been told that it's students first. And like, it is students first for me. It's not community first. The students are first, and others can be after them, but the students are why this place exists. We don't exist for any other reason besides to help students. Like, so that they're my primary concern. When I come here, I'm thinking about them mainly.
And I appreciate that, and I'm thinking about them too, and we are in a system where we need the support of our community if we are going to be an effective institution. We do not print money. We have to ask our community for money for our facilities, and we need the community's support to get that. So I think that's why I go to balance. I think that we have to work together to find that balance.
And I think one additional point, Jonathan, this is actually to a point you raised before, and that is that we should be looking for options close to home that have to do with student housing, developing such student housing. And I think, the problem with this job is that there are always two sides, and they're both right. And that's the challenge. That's why Marcia is saying we're searching for a kind of balance that does take the community into account, because we really do depend on them, and and unless we do that, we're unable to take account of our students first. But I agree with your priority. Students are why I'm here, and they need a place to live. I can also see it from the neighbors' concern, when we've had neighbors standing right here and during public comment and saying, some of my neighbors are transforming their house so that a standard 3-bedroom home can now be translated to housing 8 or 10 students and tripling their income. I understand that, and that may serve the purpose of some students, but it certainly doesn't ingratiate us to the community. And so working with the community, it's something that Marty has been especially terrific at. Over a long period of time, has been engaged with the community so that we come to understand each other And that kind of conversation is something that I think has to be ongoing if we're going to make any progress.
Can I just say one last thing?
Yes, Trustee Abu.
One last thing is, I appreciate that, and in terms of the idea of like homes being converted from having been single family to being for students, so I live in Isla Vista, everyone knows that. Part of Isla Vista's history that not everyone might know is that a long time ago, when UCSB was first designated to be where it's at, leaving here to go there, what was done was the oil companies and the banks and the private developers in this area colluded with the regents and the chancellor of UCSB at the time, Cheadle, the guy the building's named after, and made it so that UCSB was banned from building student housing in Isla Vista, like, publicly built housing. And because of that is what led to the situation we have in IV, where families are pushed out. It's, bad housing for students. They're being charged extra rent, not being taken care of the building. The county back then gave variances on a lot of things to make it easier and cheaper to build a lot of student housing. And so that's why we don't want to have that same situation happen here. I don't want to be one of those people who says don't create IV on the Mesa. I think that's a really insulting thing to a community of 25,000 people. But I think that there were decisions made that created market forces that led to the unfortunate situation Isla Vista is in housing-wise. And the main one was that the regents and the chancellor of UCSB at the time made a direct decision to say, we're not going to build enough housing for the students we're going to have, and we're going to leave it up to the market to provide these housings in Isla Vista and let our friends who owned the land at the time, it was an empty, basically, place, we're going to let them develop the housing and make a lot of money. And so that's, I think, what we should not do. We should not be, I'm not saying we're anywhere close to doing something like that, but what I'm saying is, instead of saying let's do an overlay, let's say let's build some housing on campus. Orange Coast College just built 300 units for 800 students, small but good, and then let's start solving the problem in that direction, because then you're creating a public alternative to the private market. And I think that's what is the solution to the situation. That's why I'm also saying, like, the next recommendation, I'm going to skip ahead slightly, is, explore a small off-campus public-private partnership. I think that doesn't go far enough. Like I said, Orange Coast College did 800 students living on their campus. They're from a wealthy beach community as well, so pretty comparable. And in fact, that will reduce traffic, first of all. That will make housing actually affordable for students. That will disincentivize the market from providing single-family homes for students, because now they can live here instead. If I was a student, I wouldn't want to live there anymore. I'd want to live here. And that's why I want this to be more of a thing that we consider besides limiting it to what this says, because I met with Frank Thompson. He's a very well-reputed affordable housing developer in the city, and he walked me through campus and showed me sites of where we could build housing. And, we said you can do 700 next to West Campus building by putting parking underground. And I don't know if that's even a good idea, but I got to at least hear that and see that and visualize that and get that information, and then I can make a better decision. So that's why we should be exploring more options than just a small development off campus, because also a small development off campus is going to mean more traffic to the campus. It's going to mean people living further away from college, when we know that the studies are living closer or on campus improves academic success. So that's why I think the best way for us to move forward is not by saying overlay, or not by saying restricted to a small project, but say, let's look at all the options, let's survey the people and what they need, and let's not limit ourselves. Let's look at what a real solution could be to this problem of, I think the actual problem is students cannot afford to live near campus, and same with our faculty and staff. So that's why I'm saying, Orange Coast College did it. I feel like they're from a more conservative area than we are. I feel like they're maybe from a more NIMBY area than we are. But they did it. They got 327 units. I sent you all the article. And they did it with public funds, and they're really excited about it. I talked to their board president a couple weeks ago, and they said it was tough, but they did it because it was right for the students and not, for any other reason.
Thank you, Trustee Abrood. Does anybody want to call a question on this item, or do you guys have any further discussion or comments?
We can call the question.
Okay.
What's the motion?
Yeah,
We
there's a
don't have a
motion.
motion.
Call the
Well-
question means we're done discussing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I think you want to separate them? The overlay and the small project? Might make sense.
I'll move to not recommend the overlay on the Mesa.
I'll second it.
Okay, there's a motion to not recommend an overlay on the Mesa, moved by trustee Aboud, seconded by trustee Bloom. Why don't we roll call, just for fun,
Do we
Angie?
have some discussion on that point?
Oh, I thought we were discussing it. Do you guys want
Normally, we
further
have a motion
discussion?
first, then we know what we're
Yeah.
going to be discussing.
So
My
this is-
concern about the motion is that we will be limiting ourselves in terms of getting information. And we've been saying one of the things we need to do is acquire information about who lives where and what. So I'm not sure how your suggestion is going to facilitate the acquisition of information.
Well, I think we can do a motion asking the president to get that information. This is specifically on, what this says is requesting consideration by the city of a zoning overlay in the Mesa area to limit or discourage conversion of existing single-family homes into student housing. I think we should not recommend that to the city. I think we should look into the data more and actually collect that information to make a future decision. But I don't think we should be making this recommendation at this time.
We can
But
also,
The city's the only one who knows whether or not this is possible for them. So I think collecting our data won't answer that question, which is what I thought you were saying.
student trustee Campeche?
Just before the vote goes on, I know I don't get a vote on the board. I would just like to say, before you vote, you should look on the impact this would have on the student. And I think before we recommend the president to make this decision, we should also, like Trustee Jonathan said, look for a survey and look for more solutions to this instead of just getting this act and kicking students out without thinking of the impacts it would have on them.
I think we need more information. I think there's a general agreement among us on that. I think the problem with the motion is it seems to be an affirmative statement that we will not do X.
Yeah.
I'd rather have the motion be that we just don't recommend it. Don't recommend to remove this from the proposal.
I think that's what I was going for.
Yeah. I thought it was
I
too.
think I think it's premature to take it off the list of options. And that being said, it's probably premature to recommend it to the city, but it's not premature to let the city know that that's one of the things that we're looking at. And it won't be some weird idea. It's been done lots of places, lots of times already, and I'd be surprised if they hadn't thought of it or it doesn't come up on their own. But to take something off the table, I'm uncomfortable with that. I don't like throwing it out. I'm not saying I want to push for it. I'm just saying whether we like it or not, it really is something that's on the table. We didn't invent the overlay idea. And I see no reason to take anything off the table. I think we just need to proceed with gathering information to make the best possible recommendations that we can. And this is just one option. Doesn't mean that we love it, but it's an option that's there. So it should be left as one option is, and then we can go on from there when we have something better. To shoot something out the window when we don't know that, for all we know, that may be the best we can come up with. Or like you said, wouldn't it be wonderful if we could build some student housing like they did down there? There's a few there are minor little differences in what they did and what we want to do here. But man, if it's possible, we should pursue that. Don't throw things off the table till we come up and look at other alternatives and what we want to actually endorse. We have nothing else that's as solid as this to endorse. Even if we don't like it, at least it's mapped out. So let's put together the other things and then say, here's a menu, and this is what we like best on it. That's what I would do. It seems to make more sense to me. Of course, I'm just me.
So trustee Nielsen, would you like to make a motion then to direct Dr. Beebe to move forward with some of these recommendations? as they stand.
You know,
Trustee Nielsen? Would you like these recommendations to stand as they are?
Yes.
Okay, is there a second?
Well, we're still in our motion.
Well, so can you guys, so let's roll call on the first motion that's on the table. Angie?
So just to be clear, what is the motion?
Oh, there is a motion on the table to basically remove B. So on the front cover of item 5.2, it reads that the Board of Trustees will discuss the recommendations of this ad hoc committee report and make decisions on. And it says, number one, the committee's recommendations to write to the City of Santa Barbara proposing A, possible improvements to traffic and safety, and B, requesting consideration by the city of a zoning overlay in the Mesa area to limit or discourage conversion of existing single-family homes into student housing. So it was moved by Trustee Abud and seconded by Trustee Bloom to remove that,
Remove that paragraph.
to remove B.
Remove what?
B?
I can't even follow. I
If you go
don't know.
on
where
board
that is.
docs, there's public content, 1A, 1B.
Yeah, the description of the agenda item.
It's basically the whole thing that encompasses the overlay.
I'm sorry,
So Trustee Nielsen, you want to leave it as is?
Yes.
And Trustee Abud, seconded by Trustee Bloom, is suggesting that we only move forward with the traffic and safety. But you are suggesting that so you would vote no because you want to leave it as is?
According to how that's what I was saying, but then you got more
Yeah,
complicated.
because the motion on the table is to just look at possible improvements to traffic and safety.
Trustee Hasland?
No.
Trustee Nielsen?
No.
Trustee Gallardo?
No?
Trustee Abud?
Yes.
Trustee Miller?
Yes.
Trustee Bloom?
Yes.
Trustee Croninger?
No.
Then I would like, there's 4 noes and 3 yeses.
Uh-oh, it's 4-3.
Okay, yeah, so that's fine. I'd like to make a motion then about the 1B. We just decided to leave it there, but I would like to put in there instead, it says request consideration by the city of a zoning overlay in the Mesa area, et cetera, et cetera. I'd like it to say something about, and I'm trying to see where to put it, something about looking into housing. Housing issues for City College students, because I think the specific thing of saying, let's put a zoning overlay that's very specific. It's like we're telling people the one little thing we want and nothing else. And I don't think that's what this body is saying right now. I think we're saying we want to look into housing for our students with all the good surveys and so on. So I just don't know how to change that 1B to say, requesting consideration by the city, I don't know, of
About adding
housing
and-
possibilities, including a zoning overlay,
Okay.
et cetera.
So from our, and I had it pulled up, from our joint June 15, 2016 meeting with the city, which you guys can all Google because it's on YouTube, there was one of the action items from the Neighborhood Task Force implementation and student housing. And we were supposed to report back on this in 2017 winter, but given what happened in our community, that obviously didn't happen for reasons that we know. So we could add something, Trustee Bloom, because in our conversation, this is sort of what I went back to is, this is, and you and Marianne certainly were right in the middle of this, but that, the implementation action H2 2.9 was from that, the task force was encourage UCSB and SBCC to address affordable student, faculty, and staff housing on campus and at close by opportunity sites. So
Sure.
I feel like maybe if we just reference this, because I feel like this needs to pick up on what already was started. And I don't know if that's sort of what you were thinking.
No, I agree with you. That's good.
Do you know what I'm referring to, Jonathan?
I vaguely remember. You know, I guess what I'll say is my idea of what we should recommend out of here is recommend that the superintendent president conducts a survey of student and workforce housing needs keep it general, and then recommend that the president explore the possibility of student housing on or off campus. Because that's what number 2 is explore a small off-campus project. I would like us to explore any size, any location project, just so we have all the options in front of us.
Right.
Very good, Jonathan, but I thought we were already doing that, and just sort of putting it actually in words by
No,
itself.
well, this says explore the possibility of a small off-campus project.
I know what this says.
I know.
So I agree with what you're saying.
And I wanna
But I
change
thought overall, looking at all of our needs, there's been talk about all kinds of different permutations already. So
I guess I want to make it into a formal motion that's a directive. I mean, that's what Marcia said is the point or the outcome of this agenda item, is to give direction and action
Yeah.
for the superintendent on how to move forward. So
Why
what,
don't you form that? into-
okay, I'll make a motion right now. I don't want to, do you guys want me to couple them, or do you want me to leave them separate?
Jonathan, so I see where you're going. I think it's a little, I wouldn't want to add that because I feel like the language that came out of here is what I'm comfortable with because it says, and this was a lot of work between UCSB, Dr. Gaskin. I mean, this was a ton of hours from our community, and it's encouraged UCSB and SBCC to address affordable student, faculty, and staff housing on campus and at close by opportunity sites. I don't think that we are in any position right now to send a message to our community that we're starting to explore something, because like you said, we need to make sure we have the data for it. So I think that this is a good place to start. When we have the data, then we'll know if there's enough evidence to support something else.
Okay, I feel that, but all I was saying is one of the recommendations is already like maybe contrary to that by saying we should explore a project. So maybe let's get rid of all these recommendations and just say the recommendation is to explore the issue of housing and conduct a survey of student and workforce needs. Is something like that then better?
I like what they say. I mean, it just says they're encouraging SBCC and UCSB to address it. And so that really, I felt like the task force and all the folks, this is from the report that came from UCSB and the work.
I get that, but we have our own power and we have our own directive ability, and I want us to say that what this board wants to do moving forward, because that's 3 years old, that precedes this committee work that we did.
Right.
It's a different, Dr. Beebe wasn't even an employee of the college at this point. So I think, and what we've all said today at this table, even those of us who disagree, is that we need more information. And so instead of just addressing how, I don't know what that means. I cannot come back to Anthony in 6 months and say, so, what did you specifically do on this? I want us to take tangible action. So I think, these are 2 recommendations that the committee made. I disagree with, 2/3 of them. So I'm thinking instead of, and we've had a discussion of maybe we shouldn't do this yet, maybe we shouldn't recommend something yet. So I'll just make a motion to direct the superintendent president to gather information and do a survey on student and workforce housing needs at Santa Barbara City College.
May I suggest that we also survey the community? We're talking about both here.
Let's throw all
So
in.
what is the community's view of these issues?
Let's do it. So motion to direct the superintendent president to gather information and conduct a survey on student, workforce, and community housing needs.
And community views of student housing?
Yeah, that's fine.
The state, do we know who got the pilot? The state was going to research this, and certain community colleges were going to be the pilot for this. Who was awarded? Who got that? Do we know?
For housing?
It was for housing, and I can pull it up on my email. So the state, because of all these important things we're talking about, they were going to select certain regions.
That selection process is happening
Yeah.
at this point.
Okay.
All I know is
so-
that LA Community Colleges did a survey of all their students, and Orange Coast College has already, did a survey and then acted on it. So I think we should, at the very least, for our own purposes, know our own population and issues, do a survey and figure it out. And then we'll come back in 6 months and have this discussion for real.
But we still need to understand the community view of this. If we don't wind up together on this as
I
a
leave them
group,
out when I'm
we're going to have a
talking, but
problem.
Yes, we will include people's feelings on it.
Yeah.
What I get from both your conversations, the community is the students are the community. We're talking about the same group. I taught at McKinley, and so I would hear the stories of my students from the night before, and these are some very vulnerable populations too. We've got it all. I co-chaired the Kinder Network, so I heard the stories from the preschools down over in the Rancheria area. I think we're all talking about the same people. We're talking about students that eventually will be our students. We're talking about neighbors. This is all in the name of the neighborhood that we happen to be situated within and the proximity that we have to 2 elementary schools and preschools and walking families and cyclists and motorists and all of that. So I think we're all talking about the same thing.
Well, I'm talking about our district community. I mean, I'm not just talking about the Mesa or the
Right,
West
that's what I'm
Side.
saying. We have,
No,
we're,
let's ask everybody, not just
Yeah.
Lisa.
Yeah.
And Jonathan, is your motion to insert the language you've proposed in your motion into this proposal, or is it to supplant the whole?
To supplant, because I want to supplant it for these reasons, because we already said, let's not take off the 1B because we don't have enough information, but we also don't want to recommend 1B because we don't have enough information. And same with number 2. I'm saying one thing, others might feel differently on the recommendation number 2. So let's say, let's not do either. Let's just do the information gathering and come back and readdress them.
So if we adopt your motion, all this other language goes away and we use your language?
It would come back later.
I think
Table
I
it,
think we just
table
hold.
it for now, and then we collect the information from the students and community.
So is there a second? I'll second.
okay. So it's been moved by Trustee Abud and seconded by Trustee Miller. Sorry, I'm looking at you, Trustee Nielsen. Did you have another comment before?
Yeah, I spent many years as a salesman and a trainer, and I keep hearing, and we do this as a board, we'll say, we need more information. We don't know this. That was especially when I had to sell something to a group of engineers. No matter what, they could never get enough information. So you had to overcome that to sell the issue. Nobody's selling us these issues, or they'd overcome by providing something, giving us a reason to act and to act today. That's not happening. So we're trying to create this for ourselves. So we need to create this step of getting a comfortable level of information. And different people around this table have a different level of knowledge about what's been done in the past and what those numbers are, or a different interpretation of those numbers. And I don't think there's one board, none of us disagree that we wouldn't want to do something about the problem. But I think maybe everyone at the table here might have a slightly different idea of what to do about it. And to clarify that, collecting the information is important. So on that, I will agree with you. How about that, huh?
Yeah, and you know what? Maybe the survey can, before it's released, can come back to us. We can give Dr. Beebe input on what to ask and not ask. But I think asking him to get started in this direction of a wider scope survey, I think is the best thing we can do right now, so that, because we have zero information. So we need to have, at least have one piece.
Just don't get your hopes so high that when the information comes in, that the answer is still not crystal clear.
I always keep my hopes
probably
low
won't
to
be.
get surprised. Don't worry.
Yes, Trustee Hasling.
I'm also concerned with, we go back to item B where we're asking for information by having the overlay, but then we're also specifying in that part of the motion that the reason we're doing that is to seize an objective of limiting options. And so I agree with Jonathan that at this stage, it's, I think, a really good idea to not limit options, but to give the superintendent-president the leeway to explore any option that might appeal. Are you comfortable with that kind of leeway?
Yeah, I like the flexibility. Gives us more options to be able to explore.
And you can tag team with Jeff. You two make a good.
Well, that's what I was thinking about, too. I mean, a lot of these surveys have been conducted, whether it's Orange County, LA. We can look at that information, see how they've structured the survey, see if it might work for what we're trying to do here. We had talked about that, Jonathan, and the other folks that run this committee. So Yeah.
But let's also acknowledge that this is a complicated issue.
Very
I mean, I attended the most recent CCLC conference where we had a whole workshop on not only the Orange County project, but a number of other projects. Each project had its unique features that, if applied to the other side or the other example, would have failed. So let's be aware that this is not a simple solution that we're searching for.
No.
And the first step, however, is honest to goodness information that we can depend on. So with that said, I would recommend a positive vote for this motion.
Okay, so now it's been moved by trustee Aboud, seconded by trustee Miller, to table the recommendations of the ad hoc committee and direct Superintendent President Dr. Anthony Beebe to explore,
To gather information. and conduct a survey of student, workforce, and community housing needs and concerns.
Needs, and I missed the last part.
Concerns.
Concerns, okay.
And develop options, was that part of your?
No, I think, I don't know how I feel, I think we should come back to the board to start developing options. I think we need to get the information and then we can have a brainstorming to.
Okay.
Can I clarify that we're not eliminating the traffic and safety?
Yeah, we can still do that.
Okay.
or the motion was to table this whole thing and instead just go with this?
Well, I'm suggesting we already agreed, I think, with the traffic and safety part of it, so we should keep
Okay,
that. We don't table that part.
Got it. Okay. So, should I repeat the motion again so that we're clear on what we're doing? Or you guys got it? Trustee Nielsen? You just
Yes.
chuckling, you're laughing because we're done. Okay. Would you like a roll call or would you just like us to vote?
It's up to you. I think if you vote, I think it's going to be,
I think we're good.
yeah, I think you're good.
I don't see any dissension. All in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Okay, motion carries. Thank you, trustees. This next item, item 5.3, Board Policies, Chapter 4 Annual Review. This is action. It is recommended that the Board of Trustees reapprove Board Policies Chapter 4. It's academic affairs, and this is part of our annual review process. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is second?
Second?
It's been moved by Trustee Aboud, seconded by Trustee Bloom, to reapprove Board Policies Chapter 4. Any discussion?
I just wanted to make one comment that BP 4030 is still outstanding.
Yes.
That relates to the academic freedom piece. It's being reviewed by the Academic Senate.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Beebe. It is noted that 25 policies comprise this chapter, and the 25 BP 4030 academic freedom. So thank you to those folks that are doing the work. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Oppose? Okay, motion carries. And that brings us to, this is just first reading for revision to Board Policies, Chapter 7, Human Resources. This is draft Board Policy 7250, Academic Employees, Education Administrators. And there's also now a clean version for you to look at without the red. Is there any discussion on that?
Do you want a motion first? or-
This one's just our first reading. This is just any-
Okay, my question is just, why are we making the changes?
I think the discussion said that some of what's in the board policy should really be in the procedure. And so that information that is crossed off in the board policy is now located in the procedure.
So we're moving it to the AP, is what you're saying? the
Yeah,
administrative
there's some
procedure.
duplicate language in the BP that was in the AP, and it was just confusing. So we pulled out the information that was in the BP that really should be in the AP. And so what Angie's saying is absolutely correct. I mean, we're
Okay,
removing the
that's fine.
duplicate
I just
information.
couldn't tell from
Yeah.
looking at it what was why. So,
Any other discussion? Questions, comments? Good? Right. That brings us to item 5.5. Next week, December 13, we will be swearing in our new trustee, and Trustee Bloom, will you come just to say hi?
Oh, I might.
There's always public comment.
Oh, that's right, I'll come and comment every week. That'll be fun. But your new trustee is sitting right in the audience,
no, she'll
Kate
be right
Parker, so
here.
you will be
Yep,
having
December 13th.
fine with her. I don't know what you want to do on this one today.
This is the time of year where we have an opportunity to review our organizational structure. And it's just a routine thing that we do. It really looking at our board leadership, board committee structures, which we don't have any standing committees, structure of our board meetings. We like second and fourth Tuesday. We like Thursdays. All of that. So just any thoughts? And if we have nothing and we like the way we're doing business, then we will move on. Okay, seeing as no further discussion, item 5.6, report from board members.
I'll give a quick legislative report. On Monday, all the elected officials in the legislature put forward their first bill, and there's a lot that relates to us in both good and bad ways. I just had a long conversation with Jeff Green about AB2, which is the fake free community college bill. But there's also a K-14 facilities bond again, so that's another opportunity for us to look at for future funding. But those are the only two I've looked at so far. I'll have more updates in January.
Thank you. Trustee Aboud?
Well, a comment on our experimental board office hours. I found it helpful. I think part of the difficulty that I've experienced has to do with how we communicate effectively. And sometimes as we sit up here, there's sort of an image of being unapproachable. And I don't like that. I want us to be approachable. I want anybody who has a concern to be able to come to any of us. And the institution of the office hour, it would have to be handled correctly, because there's always the temptation to jump into operational matters, and that's simply not something that we should be doing. But I think we should search for some way of being more approachable than we are.
I agree.
Anybody else? Trustee Miller?
I've got several items, actually. I just wanted to report to the board that I was asked by an adjunct teacher on international politics. Teacher's name is Stuart Kasdan. And he learned of my background with refugee matters going 40 years back when I worked at the State Department. And he asked me if I'd make a presentation to them about refugee issues. So what I did was I gave a presentation on the history of refugee matters starting in 1939, when the United States prohibited a boatload of Jews from Germany from entering the country, which later resulted in 245 of them dying in the Holocaust. So I took that all the way up to the time I worked on the issues and was involved in the passage of the Refugee Act of 1980. And we took it up to today to talk about how that affects the migrant caravan coming to our border. And I won't go into all that I presented, but I'll just say it was a very illuminating experience for me. The students were very responsive. They asked lots of difficult questions. And I was surprised that I was asked to fill up an hour and 20 minutes, and I was a little nervous that I'd be able to do that. And we totally filled it up, and I just had a great time, and I left there with a lot of enthusiasm for the students at the college, and I'd kind of like to do it again sometime. It was so enjoyable. Secondly, I attended the same seminar, trustees seminar with Peter, and also with our new board member, Kate Parker. And I just want to report that I attended, they have breakout sessions of these. There's 4 or 5 you can go to. You have a lot to pick from. I went to one on housing, heard all about the Orange County housing project, heard all about the project for housing at Sierra College. Found that very interesting and got a bunch of materials I would be willing to share with everybody. And I also attended a breakout session on equity, heard a presentation on a book that was discussed here today called White Fragility. The presenter summarized the book and a couple other books on the same topic. It caused me to download the book on my iPad, and I've begun reading that. It's a very, I'd recommend it to everybody here. It's a very interesting take on racism in our country. I'd also like to just add a couple comments about the comments we heard today and the comments we heard at our last board meeting. And I just want to state for myself that I heard the voices expressed loud and clear. I heard genuine anger and pleas for solutions. Since that incident, I've tried to reflect on where we are and the source of the anger. But I want to say I've heard serious concerns expressed on issues that haven't been addressed and need to be addressed. I think it's good that you have given us the unvarnished truth from your perspective. I know it's been heard by President Beebe, and I know it's been heard by every member of this board. Unfortunately, in this country, when it comes to racism, we seem to be in a worse place than we've been in years. I went to high school and college in the 1960s, and I had a sense then that we were making significant progress. And I guess at the legislative level, in terms of laws that were passed in addressing segregation, that there was significant progress made in the 1960s. And certainly I thought that the election of President Barack Obama in 2008 was another major step forward. But then when Ferguson, Missouri happened, I can't remember the year, I think it's been 4 or 5 years since that happened, it made me feel that all the progress we had made perhaps was illusory. I learned much from that time after the Black Lives Matter movement began. I learned of various black writers that I made a point of reading, Michael Dyson, Ta-Nehisi Coates, Jelani Cobb. And I found from reading those writings and from paying attention to what Black Lives Matter was telling us is that African Americans in this country on a daily basis experience indignities that many of us have no concept of without hearing them tell us about it. And I thought I knew a lot about racism. I learned, beginning with the Ferguson incident, that we have so much more to learn and we have so much more to do. But then and I thought we were making progress. But then I'll have to say, frankly, a new president was elected who, in my view, has given license to racism in this country. And so I think, unfortunately, racism continues unabated. Perhaps, as was suggested by one speaker today, we can never rid ourselves of racism. That's a sad thought. And the voices I heard today and that I heard last month, it pointed out that racism clearly exists right here at SBCC, and we have to do better. I know that President Beebe is committed to finding multiple ways to do better. I know he's working hard to implement some of the demands that have been made. And as an educational institution with the mission to educate the marginalized, underrepresented, and low-income students, we have to do better. So I thank everyone for speaking up loud and clear. I've certainly heard you, and I know that every member of this board has heard you. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Miller. Anybody else? Trustee Condra.
Well, I would echo Robert's comments. I thank you for that. I think everyone on this board has heard the comments of our students, our faculty, our staff. I certainly acknowledge that our Black students experience barriers, indignities, and traumas that we who are white do not experience and have not had to experience. But we can, I hope, listen and hear you. I think the same is true of many of our other students in different categories, that we tend to divide people too easily. Our students who are Muslim, our students who are Jewish, our students who are disabled, our students who are of a different, identify themselves differently in terms of their gender preference or any of the other categories. Good old-fashioned gender discrimination. I hope that we will get past this time of division nationally that we are seeing. I think it is extremely hurtful to our country and our society. And I hope that we as an institution will find ways to come together to support all of our diverse people. We value diversity, and diversity will create those difficult moments among us. And I hope we find a way to rise above that and bring ourselves together in a positive way.
Thank you, Trustee Croninger. Trustee Nielsen?
Yeah, I wanted to say something, but I think what I wanted to say was in part what Trustee Miller said about I was brought up and raised and educated in the 60s, and we thought, oh, I didn't have this. It's on.
No, it's on. We just can't hear you. You're not.
I guess I want to echo what Trustee Miller said. I, too, was raised and educated in the 60s, and I remember what President Johnson did, and all kinds of measures were taken, and I thought, wow, you know. And then I've never really been exposed or seen or observed very much since then. Before then, I did. In the early 60s and the 50s, I would be around people that would talk about things, and I was a kid, but I picked up the words. And after that, I really didn't hear those. It wasn't used by, and the discrimination didn't seem to be practiced in the places where I went and people I talked to, how I did business. And I thought we were doing pretty good as a whole in this community. And I really didn't witness or hear anything about discrimination, for the most part, too much. And then I figure there's always going to be some people aren't going to get along. There's always going to be the odd incidents here or there. And this just really went home. And the first time we had a bunch of people in here talking about it, and I went home and I sat there, and my wife said, "Greg, what's wrong?" And I said, "Just leave me alone. I'll get over it." And so I'm kind of a He-Man guy, so my wife thinks, but I was crying. And some of the speakers came up here like, I got the impression that they thought this board didn't have any feelings. And if that's what they meant to convey, they should think twice, because I know people on this board, because I've been working with them, and we do care. And we are searching for ways to make things better. And other than that, I don't have anything to say since the last board meeting, because I've been in Mexico addressing other issues, and also vacation time. So I got back at midnight last night, and I've been reading all this stuff and getting caught up. I guess that's all. I'd like everybody knows like where I've been, and where my head is, and what's going on. We care. We care too much. Nobody at this table is getting paid for sitting up here, except for Dr. Beebe, I think. And in fact, I think it costs us all money to do this job. So we have no real power. The only power we have is our vote, how we vote. I don't mind hearing about the emotion, but I need to deal in facts and figures and dates and places and times too, so that we can recommend specific actions to be done. I'm not getting those specific dates and times and who said what. I'm getting overall saying, this happened here, but I don't know when and who said it and who said it to who. Therefore, I can't issue specific orders. I can't write real specific things. I can only delegate, and we can do that as a board. We want desperately to be able to take some actions, and yet we can't really define exactly what to do, so we're working on it. So thanks for the cooperation of my colleagues. Maybe we'll make some progress.
Thank you, Trustee Nielsen. Anybody else? Yes, Student Trustee Ngibetching.
I'd like to thank the board for their comments and about the incidents that happened and about public comments on the special meeting we had last month. I think what the students I represent want, other than just saying you care and you've heard them, is action. So I think what the board has to do is to put in place policies that state that SSC isn't a place for racism. And we've been doing a good job, but we need to do more. And I think communication with the students' body, like Trustee Peter Haslam has said, it's very key. So what I'm working on is a roundtable discussion with the students, if the Board of Trustees members will allow me, have everyone come down from the high tables and just sit down with students and discuss with them, because only then you know how they think and what you want them to do. You don't expect them to see you here and just come walk to you. They won't do that. So beginning of spring, I'm planning a joint meeting with the Board of Trustees and the students. If you all are in, I'll be so happy to have the student, the club members, and everyone come talk to you guys and, share ideas on how we could all move FCC forward, because I know that's why we're all here. So, yeah, thank you.
Good idea.
Thank you, Student Trustee Ngibetching. Anyone else? No? Okay. Well, I just want to thank the foundation and Lucille. We did a presentation Monday night at Santa Barbara High School with a small group of parents that have children at the high school that are still classified as language learners. And it was a small group that Lucille was able to just pull together. I was actually there to do something else, but in my I talked to SBCC about everybody. So what I went to the high school for shifted to this, and Lucille, within 72 hours, got it all together. She emailed the presentation. She presented. We were there. Melissa Moreno, your department has a great website because the parents didn't know that ESL classes were offered at the high school. And so we were able to Google and give them the information. They didn't know about the promise. They didn't know how to get their students into dual enrollment. We were able to get them that information. So it was just a great time to get this direct service to our families in the community, and it was awesome. So thank you to Jeff and the team, because they did not have to do that within like 72, 48 hours. I just emailed her to ask her for flyers, and she's like, nope, I've got it, we're going. So thank you to everyone, because everything was online, and I know you guys do a lot to put all the information out there, so people appreciated it. Thank you. And so with that, that brings us to item 7.1. 6.1. Minimum wage increase, and this is just for information for you to know what that wage increase will be, given the increase from $11 an hour to $12 an hour. That will be effective on December 15th, 2018, which is next Saturday? Yep. Sunday. No, Saturday. Yeah, next Saturday. So yeah, any questions?
Move to adjourn to closed session.
Would you mind, can we adjourn in memory of Lamar Young? Or the tragic accident that we just had. Oh, I said, would you mind if we adjourn in memory of Lamar Young, which is...
Oh, yes.
Yes, I know you would.
Meaning no, I would not mind.
Okay, good. Yes. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so all in favor to adjourn to closed session in the memory of Lamar Young, and all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Very sad.